Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And this is exactly what the world leaders are doing right now. So here we go again.
And I believe in the future of the two-state solution.
We must keep striving for a two-state solution.
Remains the only viable solution.
The implementation of the two-state solution.
And a two-state solution.
Towards a two-state solution.
Implementation of the two-state solution.
The two-state solution.
And this is of course nothing new. The idea of two states, one for Israel and one for Palestine, has been here for a while.
Two-state solution.
Two-state solution.
For the two-state solution.
However, the idea that something that hasn't worked for decades now suddenly will work is expanding rapidly like a virus. And I will explain to you in a moment why this is a stupid idea that did not work and will not work. It is just what Einstein said. It's repeating the same mistake and thinking that you will receive a different outcome. Even President Trump said that.
And I think it's very important. It just doesn't work the other way. You know, you can't keep trying. They just has been going along for so many decades, you can't even count. You just can't keep doing. You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again.
Still, the biggest irony in this situation is that the nations that are responsible for this whole mess in the Middle East are now acting like they're gonna solve this mess that they created. So, France President Emmanuel Macron is now acting like he's this beacon of justice and he's gonna solve this problem. Really? France, one of the biggest colonizers in the past, is now telling other nations how they should act, what is just? Let's just talk a little bit about history because it's necessary. So, remember the First World War? France and the United Kingdom created a coalition that fought the Central Powers, which included the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire controlled a vast number of territories that are vital for today's discussion. But even before the war ended, France and the United Kingdom started dividing this land. What you see now is the division of the land controlled by the Ottoman Empire by the French and the British, before the war even ended. So basically, the French and the British said to themselves, well, we're gonna win this war, so let's start dividing this land. And we can give something to the Italian, we can give something to the Russians, but you know, it's basically ours, so let's start dividing it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the beginning of the problem. The British and the French didn't care about local people, of course not. They cared about the black gold. That was key in keeping their empires important. And it so happens to be that the territories they wanted to keep was full and is full of this black gold. And today, when the French president is proposing a state solution to the region, well, he already created states, and that created a lot of problems in the first place. Because before the French and the British started drawing up lines, there were no states, there were no borders. That was all under the Ottoman Empire control for over 400 years. So the majority of the problems we see today can be traced to this very moment when the French and the British started drawing up lines, borders in the Middle East, and now they want to do the same. Oy, how nice of them. By the way, this territory over here is where roughly today we have the State of Israel. However, according to the Sykes-Picot plan, this was supposed to be an international territory, whatever that means. If you look closely, you can also see a small strip of land, which is where the port of Haifa was and is. Haifa was an important port and still is, and of course the British wanted to keep that for themselves, so they gave something to the international community, but the best they will keep themselves. That said, there is something shocking about this plan, and I don't know if you caught that. But there is no Palestine here. Wow, how is that possible? Well, it's possible. Even under the Ottoman Empire, this territory was called Sanjak of Jerusalem. Remember guys, Palestine was never a country. Never a country. The modern name Palestine comes from the ancient people who came from Crete and created a land called Philistia. but the Philistines were ultimately terminated by the Babylons long ago in 605 BC, so they are no longer here. The only thing we have of the Philistines are bones that conclude that their DNA comes from the area of Crete. So, if the Palestinians claim they are the ancient Philistines, well, they should go back to Crete. I don't know they want them there, however. So, the Palestinians take their name from people that are extinct and are no more here. Do you understand the irony? Their name is totally artificial. It's fake, like many things connected to Palestine. But you know what? That's not even the end of the irony here, because they picked a name that Arabs can't pronounce. Yes, there is no P in the Arab alphabet. So when people who call themselves Palestinians try to say we are Palestinians, it actually sounds like they're saying we are Palestinians. You don't believe me? Next time you're gonna be in Israel, just listen to an Arab ordering a Pepsi. He's gonna say, "Give me a Pepsi." And you know, I'm not trying to pick on them. This is just normal. They don't have that letter in their alphabet, so they're not used to pronouncing it. But it's pretty ironic that the people that call themselves Palestinians can't even pronounce the name of the people they claim to be. However, if we understand history, it becomes very clear. The name Palestine was not created by Arabs, it was created long before any Muslim was alive. It was created by the Roman Empire that gave this name to a region as a punishment for the Jewish revolts in the 1st and 2nd century AD. Okay, but let's go back to the more modern stuff, and we're gonna talk about a lot of inconsistencies as to Palestine in the later part of this video. But before we will do that, if you like my video, please consider subscribing to the channel. A lot of people watch my videos but don't actually subscribe, and it's important for me, for the reach of the channel, for people to subscribe. So if you like the video, why not? You know, it's free. Also, if you can give a like and hit that bell button, that would be also very helpful. So if you can do that, I will be very grateful. But now let's go back to the video. Alrighty, so we talked about the imperial ambitions of France and Great Britain to take the lands after the First World War. And look at that! Britain, after the First World War, took almost exactly the same territories that was agreed on the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, including the territory that constitutes modern Israel. But let's zoom into this territory a little bit more to talk about the origins of the modern conflict. So, the British Mandate included this whole territory you see now in green. It's a big territory, so the British divided it into two parts. One part they called the Transjordan and the other one they called Palestine. Here I must say that the British didn't ask anyone about permission, they didn't ask anyone for opinion, they just divided this territory into two. They just looked at the Jordan River and thought to themselves, well, maybe this is a good division, you have the river there, so let's divide it in two. But if that wasn't crazy enough, they did something much worse. They brought a guy from Mecca called Abdullah bin Husseini and made him the king over this area. Emir Abdullah was from the Hashemite family and certainly not native of the land. So why did the British install him here? Well, it's because the Hashemites helped the British to fight the Ottomans during World War I. So, the installation of Emir Abdullah in the territory, the artificial territory of Transjordan, is a result of those secret negotiations between the British and the Hashemites during World War I. This situation continues till today, and the king of Jordan today is a descendant of that Emir Abdullah who was installed by the British. Naturally, this had its repercussions in the future. Because in the 70s, the PLO leader Yasser Arafat caused chaos in the so-called West Bank and also later on in Jordania to overthrow the king of Jordan. Okay, but for now, let's just remember that the British installed a Hashemite, not native of the land, to rule the majority of the people in a state they artificially created, Transjordan.
But wait! There's more!
As we mentioned, the second part of this territory was called Palestine. Yep, the name that was given by the Romans after the people that don't exist anymore. Here, however, the British decided to govern this newly created entity themselves, and they governed Palestine for 28 years. But it wasn't a good experience for any of the sides. First, you had Jews coming to the Holy Land, escaping the anti-Semitism in Europe. Jews were buying land for horrendous money from usually the Turkish owners. And it's not like they're buying super nice land. No. It was horrible. Mark Twain, when he visited this territory during the Ottoman Empire, he said it's a wasteland. It's nothing here. Nothing will ever be here. It was a land that he said nobody would ever want to live in. But the Jewish people had no choice, so they came. They started working with the land. They were educated people. They knew how to work with the land. They created those kibbutzes, moshavs, and they started making something out of those swamps, out of this desert. Something started to happen. You could say it was like in the biblical times, like in the times of Nehemiah, when Jews started returning from Persia and rebuilding Jerusalem. This is exactly what happened centuries later, when Jewish people were returning from the exile and creating again a better life in their promised land. And as it was in the biblical times, the Jews were attacked. This time not from the Samaritans, but by the Arabs, who didn't like the idea that the Jews live better than them. So what did the Jewish people started doing? Well, they started building like small forts with gates, with walls, to protect themselves from the invading attackers. And even today, if you visit Israel, you will see a lot of communities that are closed, a lot of kibbutzes with gates, with walls. That's because the Jewish people got used to other people attacking them. This is a memory of the past experiences that the Jewish people had in the Promised Land. Anyway, the Arabs realized that it's not gonna be easy to get rid of those Jews, so they decided to turn on the British. And this is the beginning of the Arab revolt in Palestine. The Arab militants attacked British forces, Jewish settlements, and infrastructures. So for example, British trains, railroads, and anything else that could make the life of the British forces miserable. The British used tens of thousands of their troops to stop the rebellion. They put a lot of Arabs into prisons, they killed a lot, and basically the rebellion was over. Just one more thing, the leader of this rebellion was Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem. And I am mentioning this because he was involved with Hitler. Yep, the Mufti, the Arab hero, the leader of this Arab revolution, later on in life becomes friends with Mussolini and Hitler. And this is the kind of heroes that the Palestinian movement has. This is the origin of their movement, and if you want to know more about this, I have a great video about it. I will leave a link in the description of this video for you to check out to learn more about this great hero of Palestine, the Mufti of Jerusalem. Anyways, after this conflict, the British created a task force called the Peel Commission to study the reasons for this rebellion. And their conclusions were that there are two people and both of them want the same land. Okay, that's fair. So, what do we do? Well, let's divide it. So they did, and look at the British proposed division. The green shows you the land that was supposed to be Arab, blue is Jewish, and the red one is the territory that the British decided they will leave for themselves. Okay, just stop and look at this image. 80% of the disputed land is given to the Arabs. This is the best deal they're gonna get. This is the original two-state solution. This is the origin. And today, nobody talks about it. Because you know what the Arabs said?
It's not fair! It's not fair! It's not fair!
Yep, they said no. Whereas the Jewish people, having a much worse deal, said yes. Shocker. The Arabs, however, after their rejection, returned to their old ways of terrorizing the region. Moving on, the British began to get tired of this territory that was only causing them problems. So, what do? They gave that problem to somebody else, and that somebody else was the UN, United Nations. So, the same people that are shouting today, two-state solution, two-state solution, well, they already did that. And this is the proposed two-state solution division of the land in 1947. The green color shows you the land that the Arabs were to have, and the blue color shows you the lands that the Jewish people were supposed to have. From the Jewish perspective, it was a terrible proposition because most of the land that the Jews received was a desert, the Negev desert. And the Arabs, on the other hand, would receive all the goodies, including the most important city, Jerusalem. So, surely now the Arabs will accept this, right?
No, I want one of those.
Yeah, that was basically their answer. They still wanted more. They actually wanted everything. They didn't want to give anything to the Jewish people. And how do we know that? Well, they proved it. In 1948, the Arab countries attacked Israel from all sides, hoping that they will push this small nation to the sea. Shockingly, something that nobody expected happened. Israel won this war. Sure, Egypt occupied Gaza and Jordan occupied Judea and Samaria. Again, I say occupied because it was not their territory. Why did they take it? Why they thought they're entitled to take this territory? After all, if we remember the history, before the war, this territory was the British mandate, so under British control, and before that, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. So why this fake country of Jordan that was just created think they can take Judea and Samaria that belonged to the Jews for thousands of years? And yes, I am calling this territory Judea and Samaria. This is how it's supposed to be. This is the name you will find in the Bible. This is the name that has been known for centuries. And this is where King David and all the most important biblical characters live. This is the center, the heart of the Jewish history. Having said that, the war that the Arabs started is today known as the Nakba, the Great Tragedy. The war that they started is now called their great tragedy. Yeah, they lost the war, and now they say this was a horrible thing that Israel did. The only thing that the Jewish people did is defend themselves. And well, the Arabs, they left their homes because they were told that when the war is over, when the Jewish people will be eliminated, they will be able to return. So get out now because we're gonna destroy this place. But as I presented to you, the outcome was quite different, and the Arab people were quite shocked. No! Anyway, the Arabs left and UN classified them as refugees. The UN estimated that over 700,000 Arabs left their homes. And instead of returning home as it was promised to them by the other Arab nations, they were forced to live in refugee camps. And this is the situation till today. But I have to tell you something. Remember the 700,000? Well, now we have over 5 million refugees. Right now, it's probably 6 million refugees. The refugees, of course, do not work, they don't have any income, so they need to be supported. And guess what? The American viewers of my channel? Well, you are paying for that. Unless, of course, Trump changed that, I'm not sure, but I hope he did because it's a waste of money. Just to give you a comparison, have you heard of the Jewish refugees? That's right, Jewish refugees. There were Jewish refugees, almost exactly the same amount of people had to leave Arab countries exactly the moment that the 1948 war started. They were kicked out of the Arab countries. Nobody speaks about that. That's, of course, in addition to the Jewish people that were kicked out of Judea and Samaria in 1948 when the war started, when Jordan kicked them out. They had to leave their homeland. For centuries, Jewish people lived there, and now they had to leave the place that was so dear to the Jewish religion, to the Jewish history. Why nobody talks about this? Maybe it's because the Jewish refugees that came to Israel did not stay refugees. They started building, they started working, and they quickly became important part of the society. Israel welcomed them. Israel gave them opportunity, and they were people that wanted to create something and not just sit and take foreign money, like unfortunately the Arab refugees are doing till today. If you visit an Arab refugee camp of the people that left Israel in 1948, well, nothing has changed since then. People are without jobs, and they are just generations of people that got used to receiving money from other nations. And it is done on purpose. It is done on purpose to keep Israel at bay. Imagine if those 6 million Arab refugees would now return to Israel. It would just destroy Israel. And that's the point. It's the point to terrorize Israel all the time. Okay, but let's return to the chain of events. So first we had the Peel Commission division of the land, the first two-state solution that the Arabs rejected and the Jewish people accepted. So that's the first Arab rejection of the two-state solution. Then we go to 1947, when the Arabs received another great offer of the two-state solution. And again, the Arabs rejected and the Jewish people accepted. This is rejection number 2 by the Arabs. Moving on, in 1948 we had the Jewish-Arab War, where Jordan occupied Judea and Samaria and Egypt occupied Gaza. In 1967 there was another war where Israel had to fight all the Arab countries around it. But this time it ended even worse for the Arabs than the first time. Because in just 6 days, Israel totally demolished the Arab armies, took control of the Sinai Peninsula, Judea and Samaria, Gaza, and the Golan Heights. And this is the atmosphere of the Arabs before the Six-Day War. They were preparing for war and they were confident that they're gonna win it.
Boys of 14 to 20 are being given crash courses in rifle drill, taking cover and camouflage, and grenade throwing. The country girding itself for a jihad, a holy war against Israel.
The last resort seems to be a war of liberation. The preceding years have proved to be of no avail to bring the Palestine question into a just settlement. It is inevitable, and liberation could only be achieved by war.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah, it didn't go well for the Arabs. If the 1948 was a catastrophe, I don't know what to call the Six-Day War. It was just a total disaster for the Arab countries. After this crushing defeat, the Arab League met in the country of Sudan, where they decided what to do next. And what do? Well, they come up with the famous 3 no's to Israel. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiation with Israel. And this is the starting position, the attitude of the Arab countries towards Israel. Today, nothing has changed since then. And it's really pathetic. You started the war, you lost, and now you act like a sore loser.
It's impossible!
Anyway, the summit in Sudan we can treat as the third rejection by the Arabs of the two-state solution. So rejection number 3. Eventually, after years of negotiating the pressure from the United States, Egypt agreed to a peace treaty with Israel if Israel gives up Sinai, which Israel of course did. The other territories, so Judea and Samaria, Gaza and the Golan Heights, stayed in the hands of the Israelis. And you know, there was no prospect of peace, so why would Israel give it anyways to its enemies that wanted to destroy Israel? That makes no sense. And if you remember, the Jewish people were just returning to their homeland, Judea and Samaria, place that they lived for thousands of years. A land they were kicked out from by Jordan in 1948 during the 1948 war. And now, when they are returning to their ancient homeland where King David was born, Everybody screams, settlers, settlers, illegal, illegal. The only thing that was illegal was when Jordan occupied that territory. Okay, but to understand what is happening in Judea and Samaria, we actually have to go before the 6-Day War and introduce a fellow by the name of Yasser Arafat, who created the PLO. The Palestinian Liberation Organization. This is at the beginning of the myth of some kind of ancient Palestinian people, Palestinian country. This is where it began. So who was Yasser Arafat? Well, he was an Egyptian that decided that he will represent the Arabs living in Israel. He was also a terrorist, killing civilians, Arabs, Jews, everybody, all the countries around even Israel were afraid of him. As I mentioned earlier, he almost overthrew the king of Jordan. If you want to know more about it, check out the Black September Revolt. Now, I will have to do in the future a separate episode about Yasser Arafat because he's a very complicated individual, very disturbed individual. Just listen to a reporter saying something about a meeting with him.
He was enraged. Not only did Yasser Arafat walk out on our interview, he commanded his heavily armed guards to seize all our film and audio tape. That is, any record of the interview that had just taken place.
I haven't stick a magic wand. I haven't.
What you're seeing is an interview conducted under threat. The suggestion being that if we antagonized Arafat again, it would be more than our film that would be damaged this time around.
So yeah, that's the hero of the Palestinian movement. That's the guy that created this myth of the Palestinian people. He was a terrorist orchestrating killings of hundreds of innocent civilians. And this is who Israel had to talk to. A terrorist. Okay, so now that you know what a nice guy Arafat was, we can talk about the fourth option of the two-state solution. So in the year 2000, Bill Clinton organized a meeting between Ehud Barak, the Israeli prime minister, and Yasser Arafat as a representative of the Arabs living in Gaza and Judea and Samaria. And an amazing proposal was created for Arafat that Ehud Barak agreed to. So a Palestinian state was to be created. All Gaza would go to Palestine. Judea and Samaria, 94% of this territory would go to Palestine. And most importantly, East Jerusalem would also be given to Palestine. An amazing deal. And you know what Arafat said to that?
No.
Yeah, we see the same story again.
I want the world. I want the whole world.
So this is the fourth rejection of the two-state solution by an Arab leader. Arab leaders, Arab countries, they just don't want any solutions. Just listen to what Bill Clinton said about those negotiations. And this really should destroy all the arguments that the Arabs want peace. This is somebody who was involved in that. He knew it firsthand and he saw what Yasser Arafat did. Just listen.
Look, I worked on this hard. And the only time Yasser Arafat didn't tell me the truth was when he promised me he was going to accept the peace deal that we had worked out, which would have given the Palestinians a state on 96% of the West Bank and 4% of Israel, and they got to choose where the 4% of Israel was. So they would have the effect of the same land of all the West Bank. They would have a capital in East Jerusalem. They would have I can hardly talk about this. And they would have equal access all day, every day to the security towers that Israel maintained all through the West Bank up to the Golden Heights. All of this was offered, including, I will say it again, a capital in East Jerusalem and 2 of the 4 quadrants of the old city of Jerusalem, confirmed by the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and his cabinet. And they said no.
Yeah, what else could you do? I mean, they got everything, all the best things, and they still said no. This is the kind of attitude that Israel has to deal with. No matter what they offer, the Arabs, I mean, it looks like that. They just want to get rid of Israelis. Okay, but let's move to 2005, because despite the rejection by Arafat, the Israelis still did something to achieve peace. They decided to leave Gaza entirely. But instead of peace, the people of Gaza elected a terrorist organization called Hamas. And Hamas is different than Fatah. Fatah is the organization that is following the roots of Yasser Arafat. And Hamas hates Fatah, so it's a totally different organization. Anyhow, instead of peace, this liberated Gaza turned into a military base that started terrorizing the Jewish people, and that still happens till today. I don't have to remind you of October 7th. So one more, guys. In 2008, another great proposition was made by the Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert. Israel proposed almost the same deal that they gave to Yasser Arafat, but adding some additional land to make the deal even sweeter. And guess what Abbas said to that? You guessed it. No! So there you have it, the 5 rejections to the two-state solution by Arab states, by Arabs, Arab leaders. You can all see it on this chart. So now when you have the world leaders talking about a two-state solution, well, we had two-state solutions 5 times and they were all rejected by Arabs, by Arab leaders. So why this is gonna be different? It's because people don't understand the issue, that the issue is not about peace, it's about destroying Israel. But there is still hope, because this guy, Abbas, and the Palestinian leadership was denied access to the UN Council by the United States.
America is closed.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for being with me till the end. It was a really difficult video to do because you had so many issues to talk about. I could talk about this for hours and hours, but I had to condense it to somehow, and I hope it came out logical and you could follow it quite well. If you want, you can fact check me, check any of the facts I gave and see if it's true, if you have doubts. But that's the reality. The Arabs were given land, were given opportunities, but they rejected it. And the foreign powers, such as Great Britain and France, well, they were responsible for creating all of this mess. So I do understand there are really nice people in the United Kingdom and in France, and I love those countries. But unfortunately, the politics of the imperial states at the time, well, they created all this mess. So thank you for your attention. If you like the video, please consider supporting the channel. It takes a lot of time to create those videos and a lot of nerves, a lot of research. So if you would like to support me as a creator, if that video was helpful to you, the best way to do it is through Patreon and PayPal. I will leave links to those in the description of this video, so check them out. Check other links I also have under the video because you might find them interesting. Check out my social media. Follow me there. With that said, I wish you all the best. Have a good day. Shalom.